Okay, let's dive into this. Because for anyone who's been paying even a little attention to the wilder corners of the internet.
The darker corners, for sure.
Right, the darker corners. Names like clavicular, Looksmaxxing, the PSL scale. They've kind of become symbols. Symbols of a new kind of, I guess, social extremism. But today, we're not just, tracking a trend.
No, not at all.
We're making the case that this whole movement, this hyper-optimization of aesthetics, it's not just superficial.
It's a philosophical diagnosis.
Exactly. It's a profound philosophical diagnosis of where our sense of self has just gone completely off the rails.
It really is. We are moving way past a simple moral critique here and getting right into the territory of extreme optimization, and the exteriorization of memory and this crisis of human time.
So with that.
Welcome to Doctorates of the Absurd, your provider of belief on demand.
And our mission today is to really analyze the deep forces at play here. The philosophical ones, the systemic ones.
The logic, the speed, the whole infrastructure.
Yes, the infrastructure that produces a figure like clavicular. And the central tension, the kind of existential itch we're trying to scratch for you, the listener, is really this.
It's a huge question.
It is. It's how do I know who I am when the algorithm already tells me who I am? And it does it faster, way faster than I can possibly figure it out for myself.
That speed differential, that's the critical pivot for this entire discussion.
It is.
And that's exactly why we have to resist the impulse to start with, moral judgment.
Oh, absolutely. The immediate reaction.
The conventional reaction, yeah. The immediate collapse into, is he corrupting? Is this harmful? That whole cycle. It's precisely what sustains these phenomena.
Yeah.
It fails as resistance because the system it metabolizes it.
I think this is, for me, the most crucial insight from all the source material we've looked at. We all operate under this assumption that, moral outrage is a form of resistance.
That if you shout loud enough, you're fighting back.
Right. If we critique something, we condemn it, we think we're pushing back against it. But in the algorithmic age, your condemnation isn't a barrier. It's just fuel. Raw fuel.
It's an accelerant. It accelerates the circulation of the very thing, the very person or movement you're trying to oppose.
Can you walk us through that mechanism, like a practical example?
Sure. So imagine an influencer posts something really extreme. You, a thoughtful commentator, you see this and you write a detailed ethical takedown of it.
You do the responsible thing.
You do what you think is the responsible thing, but that takedown, it contains the keywords, it probably contains the image of the extreme influencer.
Of course. For context.
And that generates clicks. It generates engagement.
Yeah.
Which, in the eyes of the algorithm, makes the original extreme content more visible, not less.
So it's this vicious cycle where your intent and the actual outcome are completely decoupled.
Completely. You intend to shame, but the system just registers acceleration.
And so the high stakes here, what we're really talking about, it's not a crisis of content. This isn't really about gender roles or traditional values at its core.
No, it's much deeper. It's a crisis of time.
A crisis of time. If we ignore this transformation, we risk the total subjugation of that slow, necessary, embodied process of human becoming.
Messy human process.
To the immediate optimizing tempo of technical systems. We are literally watching, in real time, our insides being turned out and exposed for immediate calculation.
And to really understand that mechanism, we have to start with the systems that mediate that speed.
So let's start there, with the operational logic of the internet itself.
Okay.
Because if we want to get why these figures persist, even with, overwhelming and often deserved condemnation,
right,
we have to look at how the platforms are built to sustain them. And for that, we're turning to systems theory. Specifically, the work of Niklas Luhmann.
A thinker who is incredibly prescient. He was writing long before social media was even a concept.
But he nailed the metagame of content creation.
He did. He called these systems autopoietic. And this is one of our key concepts for today.
So let's get the cocktail party definition.
Okay. The simple definition is a self-reproducing system where the output of the system immediately becomes the input for the next round of output.
Creating a self-sustaining feedback loop.
Exactly. A feedback loop that is completely closed off from external meaning.
Okay, let's apply that directly. A figure like clavicular creates controversial content. That's the output.
Right.
Then journalists, academics, other influencers, they react with moral outrage.
And that reaction is the input for the system.
Okay, so that new input, the outrage, it generates more content, it drives clicks, it accelerates the circulation.
And it guarantees the original figure's survival and success, all while the system itself is just processing more revenue.
That's the absolutely crucial point, isn't it?
It is. The autopoietic system does not register meaning. It doesn't care about your intent or your values.
It only registers the exteriority of the utterance.
Yes. The share count, the click-through rate, the comment volume, whether a comment says, "This is brilliant," or it says, "This man is a menace to society."
To the system, it's the same thing.
It reads as pure positive engagement.
Which is why, as the source material points out, these controversies eventually just fizzle out. Not because they were morally defeated, but because the topic, the individual figure, becomes, what's the term, symbolically exhausted by the algorithm.
The feedback loop slows down. A new controversy is needed.
And the system produces one, using the exact same mechanisms. This structure, this sort of self-sealing content engine, is the environment where modern identity now has to survive.
And that system tempo, the speed of it all, is what fundamentally breaks down traditional identity formation.
So we need to trace that breakdown.
We do.
Okay.
And for that, we can turn to the typology of identity that Hans-Georg Mahler provides. It's a really useful framework.
Okay, so historically, where do we start? Pre-modernity, with sincerity.
Sincerity, yeah. This was identity based on the mutual recognition of your role, your duty, your function within a shared, stable social order.
So if you were the baker or the blacksmith.
Exactly. Your identity was grounded in the confirmation you got from your community based on your function. It was exterior, yes, but it was shared, and that made it stable.
And then comes modernity, the Enlightenment.
Yeah.
And we get this massive internal shift.
A huge shift. The focus moves to the inner self, and we enter the age of authenticity.
Finding your true self.
Right. Authenticity relocated identity inward. It was grounded in your interiority, in differentiating yourself from the role you inherited from society. It was that long, sometimes painful journey to find out who you really are.
Okay, but here is where we hit the crisis of time. What's the one thing that sincerity and authenticity, these two opposed ideas, what did they share?
They both depended absolutely on temporal mediation.
Time.
Identity was not something that was instantly legible. It required what the source calls a digestive process.
I love that phrase, digestive process.
It's perfect, isn't it? It implies the requirement of delay, of uncertainty.
It means that, meaning has to be registered somatically. It has to be lived through, reflected on.
And only gradually, through this deferred recognition over time and with iteration, does that identity start to stabilize and become, legitimate.
This is identity in that rich, philosophical, Heideggerian sense. The slow, messy, human process of becoming.
Now, contrast that with the new regime, the dominant one today, prophilicity.
Okay, let's get the cocktail party definition for this one, too. It's crucial.
Prophilicity is identity built primarily through easily legible, metricized external profiles across platforms.
So optimized for algorithmic appeal.
Rather than deep lived experience.
We've just skipped sincerity and authenticity entirely. We've gone from who am I inside, or what's my role in society, straight to
how quickly and clearly can the algorithm read me and index me for circulation?
It's the dominant technology of identification. The quote from the source says it perfectly.
Profiles across platforms function as the dominant technologies of identification, providing immediate exteriority and metricized legibility.
So if you're a young person today, your identity is constructed through that immediacy.
It's stabilized not through time, but through successful appeal to the algorithm. The profile is legible before the life is lived.
Just think about that for a second. That profound inversion.
It's huge.
Instead of your life producing your profile dictates your life. You are actively optimizing your behavior, your look, your opinions to fit the profile that the algorithm has already confirmed is legible.
And that optimization for legibility is the perfect setup for the extreme movements we're seeing today.
That pressure to stabilize your identity instantly.
Without the delay of lived experience.
It forces people toward these immediate, aggressive exterior markers.
And that brings us to the crisis in masculinity.
So we've set up the systemic pressure cooker, this demand for immediate exterior identity. But this crisis didn't just appear out of nowhere.
No, not at all. The sources are clear on this. Digital media just amplified pre-existing crises of masculine identity that have been, churning for decades.
This is a dialectical descent.
That's a great way to put it. We really need to establish the cultural context that fed into these digital feedback loops.
Where should we start? Early 2000s.
Yeah, let's start around the early 2000s. You saw these cultural counter-pressure figures emerging. A great example is the comedian Patrice O'Neal.
O'Neal's comedy was all about gender dynamics. But he wasn't really arguing against, say, complex feminist theory itself.
No, he was reacting to the acceleration and the popularization of those complex theories.
So, like the work of Judith Butler being absorbed and kind of moralized by mass media.
Exactly. The problem wasn't the philosophical complexity. The problem was that theoretical nuance, the kind of stuff that requires slow interpretive labor, was being compressed into these highly portable, viral, marketable fragments.
And pop culture allowed for immediate identification. You were either for or against these fragments.
Right, you could skip all the intellectual work. O'Neal's stand-up, which was sometimes crude but always observational, was a direct reaction to the speed of this moralizing. It was an appeal to male frustration.
But what's significant there is that even in O'Neal's sort of reactionary comedy, the negotiation of masculine identity was still, for the most part, grounded in the stable pursuit of sex and social status as we traditionally define them.
It was. Which brings us to stage one of the modern internet masculinity crisis, PUA culture.
Pickup artists.
Pickup artist culture, yeah. Roughly the 90s through the mid-2000s. This was all about technique-oriented mastery.
It was about mastering the game.
Exactly. Conversational skills, emotional intelligence, group dynamics, exploiting what they saw as sexual psychology. It was a methodology, a system designed to overcome your perceived shortcomings.
The defining feature of PUA, in the context of this identity discussion, is that it fundamentally preserved a sense of agency.
Absolutely. That is the key. The core belief was, I may be poor, I may not be conventionally attractive, but if I learn the techniques,
If I put in the work.
I can overcome my aesthetic or economic conditions. Identity was still linked to the practice of a skill.
A process that required time.
It required time, iteration, failure, and eventual success. It was still rooted in that delayed, embodied recognition.
But then, disillusionment set in. The techniques often didn't work for everyone, or they worked for a little while but couldn't fundamentally change who you were.
Or your circumstances, yeah. And that failure is what led us directly into stage two, the red pill.
And this is a major transformation. Late 2000s, early 2010s.
A huge one. The red pill marks the shift from skill acquisition to these existential fatalistic accounts of sexual dynamics.
So the conversation moves to rigid, immutable hierarchies.
Yes. Wealth, status, and appearance become the primary drivers of success, not skill or conversation.
So the core belief shifts from, if I practice hard, I can win, to
The game is fundamentally rigged, and the winners were decided before it even started.
And this, right here, is the qualitative transformation. This is the leap from authenticity, trying to find your true self through practice, to prophilicity.
Prophilicity, identifying yourself through an immediate external label.
How does that actually play out in terms of how someone identifies?
Red pill identity is conferred instantly. Through ideological assent. The perfect binary, as the source lays it out, is just, are you red pill or blue pill?
It's a purely instantaneous identification.
Completely. By just agreeing with the set of claims that the sexual market is transactional, that women are hypergamous, whatever, you instantly occupy the identity position.
So no mediated action is required. No gradual recognition.
None. Your identity becomes immediately legible, it's shareable, it's constituted by the declaration itself, it's profiling as an ideology, and it completely bypasses the time required for living.
So PUA required the slow, embodied work of doing something.
Yes.
And Red Pill only required the rapid ideological assent of believing in a worldview.
And if you adhere to the red pill, you accept that the hierarchies are rigid. But what happens when you fully internalize that rigid hierarchy? And you realize that within that framework, you're on the lowest rung.
Then you move to stage 3, the black pill.
The ultimate deterministic pessimism.
It's the logical but despairing conclusion of the red pill.
It is. Its core belief is that your sexual and economic circumstances are overwhelmingly predetermined by immutable biological traits.
Mostly facial structure and height.
Right. And the defining logic is that fatalistic phrase, it was over before it began.
It transforms a general grievance into a rigid, deterministic, and fundamentally passive ideology.
If your destiny is written in your genes, why would you even bother trying?
And that very fatalism, that's the necessary foundation for the movement we're here to discuss. The extreme pessimism of the black pill creates the perfect philosophical springboard
A perfect contradiction.
for the ideology that negates it, Looksmaxxing.
Looksmaxxing is the dialectical negation. It's fascinating. It accepts the black pill premise that appearance is destiny, that the game is rigged by your genetics.
But it completely rejects the victim narrative.
It emphatically rejects the victim narrative and all of its paralyzing passivity.
So if the red pill says the game is rigged, and the black pill says, well, then I can't play,
Looksmaxxing says,
I accept the rules of the rigging, and I will use technology and optimization to cheat my way to the top.
precisely. It demands action, but not the slow, iterative skill mastery of PUA.
No, it demands action through hyper-optimization, through the metrification of aesthetics and technical intervention.
It's a quest for transcendence, but transcendence achieved through technical effort.
To really understand how that technical effort is directed, we have to talk about their system of measurement, the engine of their objectivity,
We have to talk about the PSL scale.
the perceived sexual market value scale.
Right. It's the operating system for Looksmaxxing. It provides that immediate, metricized legibility that the system demands.
And the source material is so crucial here because it reveals the origins of the acronym, and it carries this incredibly toxic genealogy.
It really does. It stands for piahate.com, sleuthhate.com, and lookism.com.
3 now defunct forums that were instrumental in synthesizing the whole ideology.
They fused that fatalistic red pill ideology with these competitive metrics of aesthetic value, and they created this unified ranking system.
But that toxic origin is almost completely lost on people today.
It is because the signifier PSL managed to completely decouple itself from that subcultural genealogy as it spread across huge platforms like TikTok and YouTube.
So it stops being a marker of a fringe subculture.
And it becomes a free-floating, seemingly neutral metric for physical attributes. It gets sanitized and rebranded as perceived sexual market value, or SMV.
It just becomes another score, like your credit rating or a social media engagement metric, completely stripped of its ideological baggage.
Right, and that allows us to get into the techniques of this so-called objective masculinity.
Because PSL is based on aggregating all this pseudoscientific research on, physiognomy, body ratios.
Hormonal markers, mating selection, a lot of it spliced together with a pop version of evolutionary psychology. But the central question is still there. Who decides what counts as an objective standard of beauty?
And the answer is that the standards are engineered to satisfy the system, the algorithm itself.
And you see this bizarrely laid bare in the mission statements of the websites that offer these PSL scale ratings.
They don't frame it as a judgment device.
No, they insist the purpose is experimentation, self-awareness, and understanding how machines see us.
Okay, stop right there. That phrase, understanding how machines see us, that is the literal definition of prophilicity in practice.
It's unbelievable.
The goal isn't to be attractive to a human being. It's to be legible to the machine. You are optimizing for the algorithm's index,
And this leads to what the source identifies as this Ezekian perversity.
which is a philosophical concept describing how an ideological system tries to launder its true nature with moral language.
Exactly. They take a ranking apparatus, a tool for comparing and judging human value and assigning it a number, and they wrap it in the moral vocabulary of curiosity, privacy, and self-improvement.
It's the ultimate cynical reframing. We're not judging you. We're just helping you achieve self-awareness by quantifying your objective worth for the technical system.
And once it's quantified, that score can be maximized. The aha moment is recognizing that the PSL scale legitimizes the construction of a new masculinity that is not based on any slow, intrinsic human value.
But on its immediate metricized legibility to the system. The objective is stability through the score.
And that stability must feel incredibly appealing in a world where everything else feels chaotic and time-bound.
Of course. Looksmaxxing gives you a sense of control by reducing the terrifying complexity of social and sexual life down to a few quantifiable facial angles and body ratios.
And crucially, it gives them a proactive goal. Instead of passively accepting genetic determinism, they can continuously adjust their input, their body, to achieve a higher metric output.
It lets them continually ascend.
Right. And identity stabilizes only by being continuously calibrated against this external, technical, quantifiable standard.
Which brings us to the figure who has pushed this technical optimizing logic to its absolute paradoxical extreme.
Clavicular.
Clavicular. He's not an outlier. He's the perfect embodiment of what happens when the logic of Looksmaxxing is followed without any reservation.
He is the ultimate case study in the subjugation of fusis to techniques, his pursuit of optimization, the max part of Looksmaxxing.
It leads to a complete reversal of almost every previous cultural ideal of masculinity.
It does. Let's detail that inversion because it's so counterintuitive.
Okay, so if you think of traditional masculine definitions, however flawed they were,
Right.
they often involved procreation, hard work, sexual selection as a form of validation. Clavicular sheds all of that in his pursuit of the metric.
He is functionally impotent, and that's a direct result of his abuse of exogenous testosterone and other performance-enhancing drugs he uses for his aesthetic pursuit.
And he actively rejects hard work as having any intrinsic value in the digital age. He sees it as inefficient compared to aesthetic optimization.
And most critically, he proclaims he no longer seeks sexual validation at all. He sees courting women as a waste of time that distracts from his core mission.
So he has chemically and surgically sacrificed the long-term stability and function of his body, the slow temporality of the organic body.
All in the pursuit of immediate metricized aesthetic success. So if the objective isn't sexual selection anymore, what is the validation loop that sustains him?
What's the point?
It is mogging. This is the core social currency of the Looksmaxxing movement. Mogging means to be the male of the group.
So to embody the aesthetic masculine ideal as established by the PSL scale.
And to continuously experience relative superiority over others.
It's purely about competitive rank. Yeah. The identity is derived from the objective feeling of knowing that you look better than the men around you.
Exactly. It's not about attraction. It's a transcendental, competitive, aesthetic performance.
And Clavicular repeatedly uses the word ascension to describe rising through these metric ranks.
He does. The psychological payoff is in the ranking, not the physical outcome or the sexual result. And this reveals the final, profound irony of the entire movement. He has surgically and chemically shed sexual selection as his core motivation. Yet he derives his entire identity and success from a validation system. The PSL scale that was originally constructed by is primarily circulated among and is primarily consulted by men.
It's a hypermasculine, competitive, completely self-referential validation loop.
The exteriority of the profile has become the only stable source of self-worth.
This is the perfect stabilization of prophilicity. You have looks as immediate exteriority combined with mismax as the continuous optimization for immediacy and self-identification.
It's the full evolution. The red pill was fatalism. Looksmaxxing is the technical seizure of control over that fatality.
It's a proactive ideology built entirely on exterior legible metrics.
And it succeeds precisely because it operates at the speed of the technical system.
Yeah.
It demands immediate action and offers immediate, if synthetic, metric feedback.
It's that extreme compressed identity that the deep dive briefing identified.
It is. It's the high-resolution, complex source file of a human life being reduced to a low-res JPEG, optimized only for immediate viral circulation and algorithmic indexing.
Okay, so we've established that the shift is from identity requiring this slow digestive process of time to identity requiring the speed of metric calculation. And to really grasp the true stakes of this shift, we have to turn to Bernard Stiegler.
Yes, and his fundamental binary, technics and fusis.
And this is where the analysis becomes genuinely alarming.
It does, because it moves beyond a critique of a subculture and into a critique of our entire modern existence.
So how does Stiegler define technics?
For him, technics is not just tools. It's the exteriorization of our memory, our knowledge, our judgment. It's the entire system, instruments, algorithms, ideologies, that imposes its calculated speed onto our lives.
Give me some everyday examples of techniques exteriorizing our memory and judgment.
Sure. A simple one is GPS. Before GPS, you developed a spatial memory, a cognitive map, through the slow process of getting lost, correcting your course, iterating.
Right.
Now, GPS externalizes that cognitive labor. Your phone remembers and guides you. Or think about notes apps. They exteriorize the memory function of your brain, making that process of deep internal recall feel unnecessary.
So techniques is the fast calculating external system trying to automate the slow internal process.
Exactly. And its counterpart is fusis.
Okay, what is fusis?
Fusis is the domain of organic growth. emergent physiological processes, the body, the mind, that unfold naturally through time and are sustained by delay and uncertainty.
And becoming human existence, identity formation, occurs in the necessary interval between the two.
Yes, between technics and physis.
So the problem arises when the speed of technics overtakes the necessary delay of physis.
Precisely. That interval has to be sustained by uncertainty and delay. When technics speeds up too much, it short-circuits physis. And Stiegler uses the concept of the pharmakon to explain this,
A classical Greek term.
meaning both poison and cure. Technics is a pharmakon, and its effect is entirely dependent on the dosage and the speed of its application.
So clavicular is taking a lethal dosage, both literally and phenomenologically.
His becoming is pharmacological in both senses, literally through the constant chemical and surgical modification of his body, and phenomenologically, in Stiegler's framework, through the technical system's tempo.
His pursuit of mogging means physis is utterly abandoned.
He is explicitly trading long-term bodily stability and function, the organic time of his own body, for immediate metricized aesthetic success.
So physis is short-circuited, techniques overheats. The temporality of the algorithmic system literally overwrites that of his body.
He's living at a speed that is incompatible with human biological and psychological development.
And this reveals the really disturbing implication for the rest of us.
It does. While clavicular is an extreme case, his existence shows that our collective human subjectivity has already shifted drastically into technical temporality.
We're all doing it to some extent.
We are. We're increasingly organizing our fundamental sense of self around the tempo of optimization and immediacy that these external systems demand.
Whether that's optimizing a LinkedIn profile or maximizing a follower count or perfecting a face filter on an image.
The goal is always speed and legibility.
And this brings us back one final time to the failure of moral resistance.
Right.
When figures like journalists or commentators rush in to criticize clavicular, and the impulse to criticize is completely understandable.
Of course.
They frame him through these narratives of moral outrage or pity, or they appeal for his redemption. They want him to slow down, to find his true self again.
But those commentators are appealing to old systems. They're appealing to sincerity and authenticity.
They presuppose an interiority, a stable intent, a moral framework.
That the autopoietic system simply cannot read. The system doesn't register their intent to criticize. It only registers the exteriority of the utterance, the attention that gets generated.
So we find ourselves in this tragic loop.
We do.
Morality, precisely because it's shocking and immediate, travels faster and farther in digital media than nuanced analysis.
A slow, careful analysis of Stiegler and Looksmaxxing might get a few thousand views.
Right. But a viral condemnation gets 10 million views, generating profit and acceleration for the very system that produced clavicular in the first place.
And that is the paradox of resistance in the age of prophylicity. Moral condemnation, political alignment, these nostalgic appeals to lost forms of meaning.
These gestures just reproduce the conditions they oppose.
Because they operate on the system's own logic of speed and exteriority. They are simply more information to be processed, to be metabolized as fuel.
So the crisis, then, isn't one of meaning or values or content. It is a crisis strictly of time and speed.
Absolutely. The moment algorithms can interpassively identify who you are for you, at speeds that interject at the unconscious formulation of desire identity, can only stabilize through immediacy and exteriority.
We're living under a new condition of subjectivity.
We are, where the tempo of optimization completely dominates the somatic time of the human body.
We started this by looking at a fringe internet figure, and somehow we've ended with a diagnosis of global human subjectivity.
It's a direct line.
We've gone from the slow, digestive process of identity, the decades it used to take to become yourself, to a figure who views his own body as a technical apparatus to be optimized for instant, quantifiable ranking.
The entire trajectory of crisis masculinity has culminated in this realization that appearance is destiny, and destiny can only be fought with chemical and surgical technology.
All measured and validated by the machine.
And the ultimate, unresolved question is still there. If identity is stabilized only through immediacy and exteriority, if our political and moral resistance is just fuel for the autopoietic system we despise,
what form can resistance even take?
We can't deny that technics has already deracinated our objective methods of meaning. The only way forward seems to be to recognize the true stakes, which are the fundamental constraints of time itself.
This is a crisis that breaks the fundamental rules of human existence. It goes beyond the limits of our own temporality. And this is the profound truth that Bernard Stiegler articulated.
What would be the breaking of a time barrier if this meant going faster than time? What shock would be provoked by a device going quicker than its own time? Such a shock would in fact mean that speed is older than time.
That concept, that speed is older than time, I mean, that fundamentally changes how we understand the challenge of living authentically in the modern condition.
It suggests the technology is dictating the very possibility of our existence.
So if you're walking away from this with one thought, maybe it should be this.
Consider where you derive your sense of stability. Is it from a gradual, time-mediated process, your life experiences, your internal reflections, your relationships that require effort and delay?
Or is it from an immediate, metricized external profile? Your professional title, your follower count, the filter you choose for your photographs.
If your stability relies on the latter, how quickly could the algorithm change the definition of your success?
That, my friends, is the deep dive.